10% on online express shipping.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful. You just said the same thing I said, only you did this.
No, I did this.
Makes all the difference.
Bingo. That's good. Right on the nose.
That's really good.
Great idea.
Refinancing your mortgage may be easier than you think. Just log on to Ditech.com or call 1-800-71-FIX. Today's low fixed rate with 0 points is only 6.750%. With interest rates lower, now may be a great time to get cash or use the equity in your home to consolidate bills. It's smart money from Ditech.com. Apply online or call us at 1-800-71-FIX.
Welcome back to our coverage of America's new war. We are now about 3 hours and 15 minutes away from the beginning of a new week of trading on the markets in New York and around the world, I should say. And joining us now is our Fred Katayama, who's standing by at the NASDAQ. We've been talking earlier about the New York Stock Exchange, but the NASDAQ suffered a terrible blow last week, and trading is going to be resuming for them as well today. Fred, what's the scene like there right now?
Well, you know, Leon, I was a bit worried because he told me to bring a wireless phone since the digital lines were down here, and they are still down, but not to worry. The NASDAQ officials have installed analog phones, and after conducting extensive testing over the weekend with its 4,000 member firms, they say the green light's there, all systems are ready to go. Now, logistically, NASDAQ doesn't face a nightmare that the New York Stock Exchange faces because there are no floor traders. All I have here is a NASDAQ media wall. Basically, trading is conducted electronically via computer nationwide. Now, there's no futures trading today, so it's hard to say exactly which way the market will open. But if history is any guide, take the Gulf War. When the day when Iraq invaded Kuwait, the NASDAQ sank 1.6%, then fell 2.7% the day after. But 12 months later, it was up nearly 18%. Let's flash back to the Asian financial crisis, October of 1997. The NASDAQ fell that day 7%, then lost more than 4% the day after. But 12 months later, it was up nearly 12%. I spoke to several traders over the weekend. They tell me, expect the market to open lower, the NASDAQ to fall around 5 to 10% at the open. But some traders told me that they're rather assuaged, relieved, because one trader, Nick Karras over at UBS, at Bancorp Piper Jaffray, told me he spoke to churchgoers over the weekend, and several asked him, hey, any stocks to buy? They were sort of in the mood for bargain hunting, at least some of them, and they had some money to spare. Also, traders say expect very heavy volume, in some cases, volume that perhaps you haven't seen the likes of before. Brian Finnerty over at C. Unterberg Tobin told me that, like everyone else, he's also a bit worried, but he also hopes that investors were assured after hearing some reassuring words from public figures such as Treasury Secretary Paul O'Neill and investor Warren Buffett over the weekend. Also, some traders say perhaps patriotism will rule with some investors over the concern for profits or panic. Gordon Macklin, the guy who helped found the NASDAQ back in the 1970s, says Americans are feeling patriotic nowadays, and perhaps that may help turn sentiment in the favor of the NASDAQ. You know, much in the way that Americans bought war bonds right after World War II. Back to you, Leon.
All right, interesting. Fred, before we let you go, let me ask you one question. We know that the New York Stock Exchange is going to open up this morning with a 2-minute silence in remembrance of those that were lost in the World Trade Center terror strike. Is there any thought at all about, or any plans at all for any observance there at the NASDAQ today?
No, I haven't heard anything about as to whether they're going to observe silence or anything. We don't really have traders here on the NASDAQ floor. And as far as I know, all things are ready to go at 9:30, but I may get word on that later.
Okay, good deal. Fred Katayama, thank you very much for reporting live for us this morning from the NASDAQ. Carol?
Leon, all systems go at the White House as well in Washington, D.C. today, where the president plans to meet with his national security team. Also, the president calling for a vote of confidence from American consumers. Major Garrett has more on both these issues. Morning, Major.
Good morning, Carol. The White House is clearly on a war footing, and that means many things. It means continued diplomatic talks, continued preparation for any possible military strike. And it also entails the president trying to calm the nation, particularly on this very important Monday, as Americans try to resume some of the routine shattered by Tuesday's events. Many children will be going back to school that was disrupted last week. Millions of American workers will be going back to work. Their weeks, we all hope, will not be disrupted as they were last week. And the president, upon returning to the White House Sunday afternoon from Camp David, tried to strike this reassuring note about his overall confidence in the resiliency and the future direction of the U.S. economy.
Be amazed at how quickly we rebuild New York, how quickly people come together to really wipe away the rubble and show the world that we're still the strongest nation in the world. But I have great faith in the resiliency of the economy, and no question about it, this incident affected our economy, but the market's open tomorrow, people go back to work, and we'll show the world.
Now, of course, as the president tries to boost confidence in the U.S. economy, his top political, rather diplomatic and military advisors are trying to continue to build that coalition the president has said he intends to unleash against the perpetrators of Tuesday's terrorist attacks. On Late Edition on Sunday with Wolf Blitzer, Secretary of State Colin Powell said under this new doctrine the president has articulated, not only will the terrorists be held to account, but the nations who supported them will be as well.
We're going to make it clear to them that they must comply with previous directions they have received from the United Nations and other organizations to stop this, to expel this organization, to destroy this organization, or to help us to destroy this organization. And they will be held accountable for the support they have given to this organization if that's who we finally determined is responsible and we're going after them. They will have to make their choice, whether they want to be in the receiving end of the full wrath of the United States and others, or whether they want to get rid of this curse that they have within their country.
Now, all of this occurs in a completely different political environment for President Bush than he knew before the attacks on Tuesday. We have a new CNN Gallup USA Today poll showing his approval rating at 86%, disapproval rating only 10%. It's a stratospheric high for President Bush. We can see it on the screen there. How does that compare with previous U.S. presidents? Well, the closest would be his father, George Herbert Walker Bush, who, as you can see, February 1991, after the conclusion of the Gulf War, had an 89% approval rating. President Bush's approval rating, though, not the product of welcome events at all here at the Bush White House. They understand the public very supportive of the president. They're also very mindful of transferring that public support into something that is long-lasting and effective. And in that regard, the president and his top advisors have reminded the country repeatedly over the weekend that though they are unified, though they are supportive, though they are seeking some form of retaliation, some might even call it vengeance, the Bush administration is urging them to be patient as it puts together its overall military, diplomatic, and economic strategy to first isolate, then dispose of the terrorists who committed the acts last Tuesday. Leon, Carol.
All right, Major Garrett reporting live from Washington, and certainly that diplomatic pressure already being applied overseas.
That's right. As a matter of fact, we're beginning to see the manifestations of the words of Secretary of State Colin Powell. There's a word that they wanted to hold accountable nations that are harboring or making life easy for terrorists around the world. A high-level delegation from Pakistan is in Afghanistan right now delivering such a message to the Taliban. Let's check in now with our Nick Robertson, who is, we believe, the only American journalist who is still there in Afghanistan. He joins us now live by way of video phone. Nick, what have you learned?
Well, Leon, I'm in Kandahar. This is the spiritual capital of the Taliban. It's in South Afghanistan, about 300 miles south of the capital, Kabul. And it's to here today those Pakistani diplomats came. Aziz Khan, a Pakistani former ambassador to Afghanistan, so likely there to have strong ties already with the Taliban, to know a lot of people here perhaps have some influence. And with him was Pakistan's intelligence chief, General Mahmoud, and they both came today. The first meeting they had lasted about an hour and a quarter, and that was with the Taliban foreign minister, Ahmed Wakil Mutawakil. And in that meeting, they discussed various things. After the meeting, we don't know all the details of what they discussed, but after the meeting, the Taliban foreign minister was asked if they discussed Osama bin Laden, and he said, well, actually, Osama, we didn't discuss him very much. He said that he would take the meeting, take what he'd heard in the meeting with the Pakistani diplomats, and take it to a higher authority. We also asked the Pakistani diplomats what was their message to the Taliban at this time. They said they'd come to tell them that time was short and that they needed to resolve this problem quickly. Neither side, neither party in this discussion characterized the meeting, and we understand there may have been a follow-up meeting, although we're trying to confirm details of that at this time. The higher authority, the foreign minister, the Afghan Taliban foreign minister referred to, would likely be Mullah Omar, the spiritual leader of the Taliban. And we know that last night in a national radio address, Mullah Omar called for all religious leaders to go to the capital to debate the current situation. He also called on all Afghans now to begin to pray that should America attack Afghanistan, that they find victory. Leon?
Nick, are we to interpret then those words from Mullah Muhammad Omar to mean that the Taliban is not likely to submit at all to this ultimatum they are receiving?
Leon, it's got to be said they've shown no indication of that so far. They've been under a lot of pressure in the past. They've had UN sanctions for over 2 years. Those sanctions stepped up over a year ago, or just under a year ago, and they've shown no indication so far to hand him over. It's exceptionally unlikely. I would say from my read of the current situation, there are no indications whatsoever. The Taliban have always said he's an honored guest and we wouldn't hand him over. He is very valuable, if you will, to the Taliban in as much he's a very charismatic person. And that draws in some support, and the Taliban do need that support, those fighters that he draws in to fight their war in the north of Afghanistan. It's an ongoing civil war situation here, so they need the kind of support that he brings into the country.
Well, Nick, considering that there is a continuing civil war there, are you able to get a sense at all of whether or not there is any public unity of the Afghan people, not necessarily the Taliban government, but of the people who live in that country? Is there a sense of unity right now and defiance of this in the face of this ultimatum they are facing?
Well, there was a meeting of the tribal elders in one region a couple of days ago, and one of the statements they made was that the Taliban shouldn't close the door on negotiations at this time. But where there does seem to be unity amongst all parties here, whether it's the tribal elders or people we talk to on the street, they say that if Afghanistan is attacked by America, then they will certainly band together and they will certainly fight back. And they say to the last man, so there's certainly no disunity on that part at this time. Afghanistan's been going through war for the last 22 years, and for many people here, this could just be a continuation of that war. It started in the 1980s with a Soviet invasion. It had Mujahideen, holy warrior infighting. Now it's had the Taliban versus the Northern Alliance. For many people, this would just be a continuation, something else, if you will, to continue to fight against, Leon.
Nick Robertson reporting live for us by video phone from Kandahar, Afghanistan. As we said, we believe Nick is the only American journalist who is still in Afghanistan, so this is the only place to find out exactly what's happening there. Nick, make sure you stay safe and get back to us when you get the latest word on that next set of meetings. Carol, over to you.
Certainly, he's helping us get the big picture in terms of what might happen next. We just had talked with Major Garrett, who was reporting from the White House, and Bob Franken this morning is at the Pentagon. Bob, when we talked with Major Garrett, he said that frankly, it's very clear that the White House is on what he called war footing. What is the sense that you're getting from the Pentagon?
The sense here is that when the White House declares a war footing, the war planning is done here. And of course, at the same time, we still can see as we watch outside that the building is still in just its initial stages of repair from this calamitous collision that occurred almost a week ago now, the American Airlines plane plowing into the Pentagon. And it raises the point, this is a place where for so many years the planning was done for battlefields around the world, but now the building itself has become a battlefield. So many of the strategic decisions about how to wage war have been made within the walls of this massive five-sided building. But now a new kind of war has arrived at the Pentagon. A plane piloted by hijackers shattered a section of the nation's military nerve center and shattered hundreds of lives.
The head of our family is gone, and our lives will never be the same.
Every day since the crash, Teresa Russell and her large family meet at a hotel near the Pentagon, wait for word from the Defense Department. Robert Russell, a budget analyst and Teresa's husband of 30 years, is buried somewhere near his office, right where the 757 crashed through the wall.
Although we haven't given up hope, we have to face the reality. that he may not come back, you know.
In fact, Robert Russell's section of the Pentagon had just been remodeled, reinforced, so reinforced that many people near the site of the crash escaped. Navy Petty Officer Charles Lewis was rushed to the hospital and treated for smoke inhalation. He was able to get out.
The wall was like Swiss cheese where we were at, and I mean, we could hear people yelling at us. We were yelling back, trying to bang and beat on